next. Business Week Secret Shoppers. What is this? So, Business Week actually sent a couple of its own secret shoppers to some of the Walmart stores to survey their customer service. And one of the employees actually said this: if Walmart doesn't care for me, why should I care? And next, there was actually this horrible smell in the store that lasted for 2 days from some overnight spill. And the employees actually did nothing about this, and it got so bad. And that the second day, the fire department had to came in with masks. So this actually leads to very poor customer service. So what are the other consequences? Employee theft and paperwork errors. So if the employees have no passion or motivation in their work, it will result in an increase in employee theft and negligence in paperwork. Decrease productivity. So if the employees have no motivation in their work, it will also mean low productivity. And there's also a possibility that there's an increased conflicts between the workers. And poor customer service will actually result in increased complaints from customers. Okay, low morale. So many of the workers' morale are generally low. They feel hostile towards the company, and by extension, they often treat customers with indifference or worse, which reflects badly on the customer service. So it results in a poor customer service. So this actually puts Walmart in a box. Without a reasonable service, the company is forced to compete almost solely on their prices, and that in turn squeezes margins, and it actually means lower profits or earnings. And this actually makes it more difficult to pay the employees the better wages and benefits, which can have a chance to boost their morale. So this eventually leads to a vicious cycle. So okay, the additional question. Suppose now Walmart terminates flexible scheduling of part-timers. Would that be beneficial to management and employees? So right now, I'll talk on the employees' point of view. So the employees will actually have a more stable job and income. Why? Because they are now working as a full-time worker. So having a more stable job and income, or being a full-time worker now, they will have a predictable working hours, which means they can actually spend more time with their family and friends. They have the ability to go and plan. So all this will result in the employees having a higher morale. So right now I'll talk about the management point of view. So increased productivity. So why an increase in productivity? If the workers have more passion and motivation in their job, meaning they are more willing to do work, productivity will actually increase. And if the morale of the workers is high, it also means they are more willing to serve the customers, which means an improve in customer service. So as a whole, the profits of Walmart will actually increase. So obviously it will be beneficial to both the employees and the management. So right now I'll pass on to Ziwei who will touch on question 2. Thank you.
Okay, I'll now touch on question 2. Basically, there are 2 parts to this question. First, what ethical principles actually apply to the case, and the second part is actually how do all these actually apply to the case. So first, we'll begin by answering the first part of the question. So our group has actually defined the following measures for measuring ethical standards. So first, we have the Immanuel Kant's categorical imperative, following which we have the Dankert's rule of change, and next we have the risk aversion principle, following which there's the utilitarianism principle, and lastly there is the deontology principle. So after defining all these measures, our group will now move on to specify what does each of these principles actually represent. So first, for the Immanuel Kant's categorical imperative, it actually states that if an action is not right for everyone to take, it is not right for anyone. Next, Dankert's rule of change actually states that if an action cannot be taken repeatedly, it is not right to take at all. Following which, we move on to the next 3 principles. First, we have utilitarianism principle. This actually states that we should take the action that actually achieve the greatest and the highest value. Next, the risk aversion principle states that we should take the action that actually produces the least harm or the least potential cost. Lastly, with the deontology principle, which actually states that individuals do actually have their own absolute rights. Upon defining and explaining what does each principle actually mean, we'll now move on to the second part of the question: how do they actually apply to our case? But before tackling the second part of the question, first we have to ask ourselves, how do we determine who would actually decide what is ethical and what is not ethical? So our group has actually identified the Walmart stakeholders to actually decide what is ethical and what is unethical. They consist of, first, the associates, which are the employees. Next, the management. Next, we have the shareholders, following which, the customers, and lastly, the government. So now, how do they actually apply? For the first principle of Immanuel Kant's categorical imperative, we actually take into account the government's perspective. This principle actually states that if an action is not right for everyone to take, it is not right to take at all. So in the government's perspective, if every departmental stores actually follow what Walmart is doing, there will actually be an increased unemployment. Thus, this actually decreases the well-being of the society. Therefore, in the government's perspective, this would actually be unethical. Next, we'll move on to Lancaster's rule of change, which actually states that if an action cannot be taken repeatedly, it is not right to be taken at all. A small change could be acceptable now in the short run, but in the long run, this will actually become unacceptable. So by applying to context in this case, we'll look at it in the associate's perspective. So in the short run, the associates might actually experience slight changes in their shift. However, in the long run, this might actually gradually create this resentment among the employees, as their lifestyles will be greatly affected by these changes in shifts. Next, we'll move on to the risk aversion principle. This principle actually states that action taken must produce the least harm or the least potential cost. Thus, we'll once again look at it in the perspective of the associates. In their perspective, this change for that what Walmart is doing will actually create much change and disruption to their lifestyle. So this might be unethical in their perspective. Following which, we'll now cover the next two principles. First, we have utilitarianism principle. So we'll look at it in terms of all the 5 stakeholders that we have mentioned just now. In the associates' perspective, what I feel is, once again, we have mentioned, is a change in their lifestyle. So to their perspective, this is unethical. While to the government, as mentioned, it will decrease the well-being of the society, thus it is also unethical. On the other hand, the shareholders would actually feel that this is ethical, as what the company is doing is actually reducing their operation costs, thus increasing their well-being. While the management on the other hand will also feel that it's ethical, as this will actually reduce their working hours in terms of scheduling of the workers' shift. Lastly, the customers will also feel that it's ethical, as they are able to enjoy greater efficiency when they enter the department store due to the change made by Walmart. Lastly, we'll cover the last principle of deontology. For deontology, it could be taken into the perspective of both the associates as well as the management. For the associates, what I feel is that they do have their rights to actually have a proper and stable job, and not having to have a job that actually requires them to be on standby 24/7. Thus, to their perspective, this is unethical. To the management's perspective, what I feel is that they do have their rights to actually exercise certain policies that actually maximize their well-being and the company's well-being. So to their perspective, this will be ethical. So upon answering question 2 about how do these principles actually apply to our case, we do actually have another additional question posed to question 2. So what we feel is, so this question actually asks, can ethical behaviors of corporations still be legal?